from SEC quarterbacks throwing trash passes to Texas fans actually throwing trash on the field. We'll talk about all that and more that transpired in week 8 of college football. It's football, bro. You can check out the podcast on any podcasting platforms, or you can just check it live on the YouTube. Let's start this sucker with my college football top 25 as we got a few movers. For instance, Michigan. Wow. Not having a quarterback sucks. They end up dropping a game to Illinois. They lose 21-7. They have no offense. Their defense could only do so much. Will Johnson, he's hurt. He's banged up. Now the defense is hurt and banged up. Things aren't looking good for Michigan, so they are my faller this week from the top 25. Teams that just missed the cut. I got Syracuse, who was on bye this week, but they have a big game coming up against the undefeated Pitt Panthers. And then Memphis, man, they had one high-scoring affair taking on North Texas. They end up winning 52-44. They'll go on to take Charlotte next week. It should be a relatively easy game. I feel like Memphis is this team we forget about in the American with everything going on with Navy and Army. But hey, Memphis is hella good as well. And then Duke. They get SMU this upcoming week in a battle of 6-1 teams. But they beat Florida State. Was it convincing? 23-16. It was fine. They'll probably get pounded by a very hot SMU team, a very, very hot SMU team. But still, Duke, man, they're overachieving. I thought they'd be a little bit worse than this, but 6-1, man, I'm kind of impressed. And then UNLV. Maybe they got caught looking ahead, which they got Texas on this coming up, so they got caught looking ahead. You can make an argument Texas got caught looking ahead to Vandy. But they got it done against Ball State. They beat Ball State 24-14. Next is Texas. Don't sleep on this Vandy team. They're fun. They ain't half bad. Let's go to the top 25. As Navy, they enter the fray here at 25. They pounded, for goodness sake, they pounded poor Charlotte, 51-17. Next is Notre Dame, which I'm thinking I might make the watch-along game because I want to watch more Navy. I want to watch more Army. Army's been a covering machine for me. Speaking of which, they're here at 23. They got things done. They beat ECU 45-28. They'll be on a bye this week, but dude, Army and Navy combined 13-0. Will it remain that way? Notre Dame, that's a tall task, but they did lose to Northern Illinois. Granted, they're playing better football this year, but still, it's kind of a make or break game for both of those teams. Well, not necessarily for Navy because it's not a conference game, so they could eat the loss and still win the conference championship and make the college football playoff. But we'll see. It's definitely a make or break game for Notre Dame. They kind of feels like they need to win out. Even taking another loss wouldn't feel good. Like, can you make the college football at 10-2 with a loss, or 10-2 with a loss over Northern Illinois, and then what, Army or Navy or even USC? Because those are kind of the tough teams on Notre Dame's schedule. Well, we can't skip over Illinois. 24 here on the rankings. Illinois, they get it done in some very, very unusual unis. They had the little leather helmets on top of the normal helmets. They were fun-looking jerseys. I liked what I saw, but they get it done. Illinois, they got a defense. They got a hell of a good defense. It helped that, Michigan doesn't have an offense, but nonetheless, man, Altmaier's getting things done. They win 21-7. Don't look now, man. Illinois 6-1. Pitt here at 22. I mean, I don't know if I buy into Pitt yet. And if they could beat Syracuse, then they're probably going to shoot up my board pretty quickly. Like, Syracuse, I think, is one of the better teams in the ACC. And if they could get past Syracuse, then what? They're probably looking ahead at, I know they got SMU on the schedule. That's going to be a big one. Who else do they have on the schedule? Let me just pull it up here. Oh, not the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't care about the NFL right now. Speaking of which, man, golly, last night, talk about last gasp for the Jets, not going well. Pittsburgh's this is the tough part of the schedule. Like Syracuse, then you follow that up with SMU, which are winnable games. Virginia, they're going to be a heavy favorite there. End of the year with Clemson, Louisville. Oh, I think maybe at best, they probably, like, honestly, Pittsburgh, like, I don't see them beating Clemson. Clemson's kind of a juggernaut right now. But can they go 3-0 against Syracuse, SMU, and Louisville? I have doubts. So I think this is probably a 10-2 Pitt team at best. But hey, we'll see, man. We'll see. Boise State, they didn't play this weekend, but hey, they got a big game this week against UNLV. A game that could throw some chaos in the Mountain West there. I mean, a lot of people believe Boise State and UNLV, this will be the first of two games because they're probably going to face, they're arguably the best teams in the Mountain West. And they'll probably face one another in the Mountain West Championship game. So, I honestly, I'm really looking forward to that one. Is that going to be a Friday night game, or is that going to be on Saturday? Maybe make a special exception. Oh, it is a Friday night game, and it's at UNLV, man. It's going to be a good amount of fun. It's going to be a good amount of fun. Everybody loves the NFL draft, and I know you want to be familiar with every potential prospect that your team may draft. So I got good news for you. My draft guide is available for purchase. It is good throughout the entire draft cycle, and it updates through the season regularly. You'll get my current evals and rankings on hundreds of different players with player backgrounds and analytics. It also contains combine and pro day numbers, as well as my notes from the Senior and Shrine Bowl. You can purchase it for a one-time payment of $30 on PayPal, Venmo, and now I have the Cash App. Follow the link in the description and be sure to include your email because it is a Google spreadsheet. That is how I share it with you. So please don't make me hunt down your email. Just don't do it. Anywho, it's a great purchase and it's a great way to support the channel. All right, let's move on to 20. Not much changes here. Missouri, they're here at 20. They'll take on Alabama next week. You got to feel like it's probably going to be a loss. Never say never, though. Alabama kind of on a down slope. They're not feeling like the Alabama that they did in the first half of that Georgia game, the last 3 games. Mizzou, I know, they don't look incredibly good. Brady Cook, getting hurt, going to the hospital, coming back, surging this Tigers team to a win over Auburn. Luther Burden didn't have the best game. I'll talk about him a little bit later. But, yeah, man. Mizzou, what am I going to do with you? Ole Miss, they're on a bye. They get to take on a Oklahoma team that's in all kinds of disarray. They got pounded by South Carolina. They fired their OC. I don't see things going particularly well for them. Ole Miss, they kind of got to win out. They got to win out. And then I have SMU, the Ponies. They're here at 18. They pounded Stanford 40-10. They take on Duke, and what's surprisingly a battle between 2 one-loss schools. Duke, I believe, who is Duke's one loss to? Can't recall. SMU has the loss against to BYU, of course. This is basketball. I don't care about basketball. Give me football. Duke's got Miami on the schedule too. Rough. Good luck. That's right. Georgia Tech. So they already got a loss in conference play. Another loss for Duke probably ends their bid for an ACC title. SMU, they kind of got a little bit of leeway, but they should be able to get past Duke. And then we got Iowa State. I just don't believe they end up getting past Central Florida. Was it Ja'Cory Brown? But they were trailing At times, by 2 scores in this game, I couldn't get behind. I couldn't get behind stinking this Cyclone team. I don't know who they are. They play good defense, and there's some games where I'm like, oh, they should have won by a lot more. You go back to that Houston game, it's like, yeah, they were always in control, but it wasn't like the most impressive victory over a bad Houston team. But they get it done against Central Florida. They beat them 38-35. They'll get a bye, but hey, dude, Cyclones are 7-0. They're up there with BYU when it comes to the Big 12 teams, but I don't know if this is maintainable for the Cyclones down the stretch. I just don't know how much I really buy into them. And then Alabama, man. I didn't think Bama was going to drop out of my top 15. But as I got to looking, I was like, man, dude, they've really blown their chances. Like, now you got 2 losses in the SEC. Puts you on the back foot. You kind of got to win out if you have any chances or any hope of making the SEC title game. Even then, you kind of got to win out anyway to make the college football playoff. So, like, Alabama, man, they're in a tough spot. They end up losing to Tennessee this week, 24-17. And from just shooting themselves in the foot, like penalties galore. Like, golly, there were so many penalties in that Bama-Tennessee game. The offense got smothered. It was like after their opener drive, they couldn't really move the football. They have freaking Jalen Milroe. Didn't he throw it like 40 times in that game? Like, Tennessee's defense, probably one of the best, if not the best defense in college football. So I get it. But to not be able to do anything, to keep shooting yourselves in the foot. You had the red zone interception that Tennessee almost took to the house. Oh, we're on the struggle bus, man. We're on the struggle bus if you're a Clemson Tide fan. All right, number 15 is the Texas A&M Aggies. They are also undefeated in conference play, and they got a big game coming up. Texas A&M, LSU. Those two are the last undefeateds currently in the SEC. So this is a very big game for both of those programs. They get it done this week. They beat a very, very scrappy Mississippi State team. At least they have been the last few weeks. They beat them 34-24. A&M, I'm starting to believe in a little bit after like opening the year with a loss. They rip off 6 straight wins. They had the impressive beatdown of Mizzou. Now you got to go do it against LSU. Kansas State here at 14. They beat the Mountaineers 45-18. They get a very lowly Kansas team. Kansas is just not the Kansas of the last 2 years. They're just not that team anymore. They're not that team this season. Should be a win there as they try to make their case to make the Big 12 championship game. And then Notre Dame here at 13. Lucky number 13. They beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, they opened the game with the touchdown. And it was bye-bye after that. Georgia Tech was down to their backup quarterback. Unfortunately, Haynes Keene hurt, couldn't play. So, like, for me, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. I liked Notre Dame 13.5. They were minus 13.5. Took that, hit that with ease. They win 31-13. Now they take on a Navy, a very scary Navy team. And I say scary because you lost to Northern Illinois earlier this year. Granted, you're playing so much better football since then, but still, I would be afraid. And then Liberty, they're still here at 12 for me. I'm not going to drop them down until they lose. And if they lose, I probably drop them out of the top 25 altogether. This is the team that I looked at and said, yeah, this is probably going to be the group of 5 team that makes the college football playoff. They have one of the easiest schedules, I think, in the country. I think they are shoo-ins to win the Conference USA championship game. If they do that, remain undefeated, like it's gonna be hard to make a case for maybe UNLV or Boise, whoever comes out of that as the Mountain West, and those teams are gonna have to win out. Like if you're Boise or UNLV, you're gonna have to win both this game and the Mountain West. Obviously, you got to win the Mountain West, but you got to start with winning this game. So do you put a one-loss Boise team in ahead of an undefeated Conference USA champion in Liberty? I don't think you can. Well, I mean, Boise State's one loss has been against Oregon. That's a college football contender. Yeah, we saw what happened. They lost. They lost to a college football contender already. Liberty should at least be afforded that right for going undefeated. That's kind of my talking point on that. And then BYU sits here at 11 for me. They beat Oklahoma State in freaking crazy fashion. Like, first off, this Oklahoma State team, they have seen better days. They have seen better days. And they got it done. I mean, BYU got it done with seconds left on the clock. I think it was like 15 seconds left when they hit that long touchdown to take the lead, and they end up winning, obviously 38 to 35. But just gonna say that wasn't for this. That was an Oklahoma State team that's been on the struggle bus all year. Ollie Gordon was finally able to get going and whatnot, but I still believe in BYU. They get Central Florida next week. I know, Central Florida, they're coming off a scrappy loss. A game they probably shouldn't have lost. They had essentially 2 pick sixes, but a game that they shouldn't have lost to Iowa State. So maybe they're going to come in hungry or they come in demoralized. One of the two. And then at number 10, I got Indiana. Hell yeah. Them Hoosiers, they beat the piss out of Nebraska. A Nebraska team that, they're not a bad team, Nebraska. And they got bullied in the trenches. Like, Nebraska's got a really good defensive line, and they get bullied in the trenches. Just not a great showing for Nebraska there. Poor Dylan Raiola, man, had probably the worst game of his collegiate career. Indiana is just so good in so many facets of the football. And I get it. Curtis Rourke, he's now down. He's out. He's down and out. He's down and out. But even the backup got things done. Like, let me pull up his stats. Because, like, Rourke left in, like, midway through the second quarter or something. But... dude, yeah, Taven Jackson, he goes 7 of 8 for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, that's kind of nutty. You go to let's see how they were on the ground. They were exceptionally good on the ground. Jackson only 12 rushing yards, but I mean they got 64 rushing yards from Lawton. Ellison had 105. Like, dude, this is a great Indiana team. They'll be without Curtis Rourke for Washington. That scares me a little bit. Feels like it could be an upset there. If Rourke can come back healthy, you're kind of hoping he could at least come back healthy before the Michigan game. I believe Indiana's, I believe they go Washington, they go Michigan State, then they go Michigan. Let's just look at that. Yep, they go Washington, then they head to Michigan State, and then November 9th, they get they get Michigan. So you're kind of hoping Rourke can come back healthy for that game, and they follow that up with a bye, and then Ohio State. So, I mean, I don't know if you're the Hoosiers. Do you feel like you can get by these next 3 games without Rourke? Seems like a tall task, but you gotta give the Hoosiers their flowers, man. They're 7-0. LSU, they're here at number 9. And they dominated Arkansas. They beat them 34-10. They'll take on A&M, as I already mentioned. That's gonna be a huge game. Whoever wins that currently controls their own fate in the SEC. They can make a bid for the title, but LSU's looking really good. I'm just gonna say that A&M LSU game is gonna be tough to bet on outside of whatever the potential over would be. Let's see if they got odds right now. See if they got an over and under for that A&M LSU game. I feel like it's got to be close to 60, maybe 63. Because that sounds right, right? All right, so it's at 53? Listen, I get it. A&M's got a good defense, but I think that we're going to see a lot of slinging of the football. Then again, Ole Miss, LSU, they ended up combining for 46 points. I don't know. I feel like I'd take the over at 53.5, but I don't. I have to keep telling myself, don't bet these over and unders, man. Don't bet these over and unders. They always overperform. Like A&M, man. A&M, Mississippi State, I was like, ooh, I think that game could finish like 38-17. So I took the under at 56.5. They ended up getting 58 combined. Gotta freaking love it. We got Clemson here at number 8 playing great football. They'll get a bye this week, but they pound Virginia 48-31. Virginia, they just start throwing bombs at the end. Able to cover that 20.5. Fortunately for me, and most of my parlays, I bet it down to 16.5. Covered. Love it. Love to see it. But you can make an argument that Clemson's the best team in the ACC right now. It kind of feels that way. And then Texas. I guess let's talk about this Texas-Georgia game. So it was nuts. It was incredibly wild. Texas comes out the gates. Defense playing great, right? Andrew Mukuba, Jahdae Barron, they had great games. Defense playing well. Forcing mistakes for Carson Beck. But like that Georgia defense was fierce. The offensive line of Texas was overmatched. They lost in the trenches. Quinn Ewers didn't have much time to throw, but when he was making mistakes. I think he had 6 turnover-worthy plays in this game. Absolutely ridiculous. And it allowed Georgia to kind of just like, okay, let's just take advantage and let's just score points where we need to score points. I think they were up 23-0 going into halftime. Things got a little bit more lively in the second half. I mean, I didn't even mention Quinn Ewers. He ends up getting benched before half. Archie Manning comes in. Outside of a long run, it relatively looked the same. So at this point, it was like, yeah, why not? Let's just put in Quinn Ewers to start the half. And if it's more of the same, I guess we'll put Archie in, but we need a spark somewhere. And hey, Ewers was able to give him that spark. Texas defense came up with a few big plays. For instance, that Jahdae Barron interception, which was kind of a sticking point. Got to talk about a lot of chaos, right? So you had for the most part, it should have been a no call, or you could even call offensive pass interference. I forgot who the receiver was for Georgia, but basically kind of like pushes Jahdae Barron back at the stem, you know, where you're trying to get that separation. And the pass is out before the receiver even turns his back. Jahdae gets pushed back. He sees the pass coming, so he just makes a play on it. Gets a great return. But they call defensive pass interference. And I mean, they call it. They throw the flag, and then they say it to the crowd, right? They're like, the call, defensive pass interference on the defense. 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. Texas fans begin to throw trash onto the field. The Georgia sideline, they have to get away from the stands, so they're creeping close to the field because there's trash being thrown everywhere. You have Sarkisian having to come out. Sarkisian having to come out and be like, yo, guys, calm down. Probably could have warranted unsportsmanlike conduct, but the refs at this point were so terrified for their lives. Do you really want to piss off the mob after you already blew that call? But wait, once finally some order comes back, they're like, upon further review, there was no defensive pass interference. I have never seen that. I've never seen, which I'm not going to argue, hey, no pass interference. That's a good interception. Terrible call by the refs. Keela knows it. She's out there like, yeah, no, it was a bad call. But I've never seen refs after they have announced to the crowd the penalty, go back on that and be like, no, we're going to pick up the flag. Typically, their time to communicate that is before you announce it to the crowd, because then you go to announce, oh, we're picking up the penalty. No flag on the play. Like, for one, either they saw it on the Jumbotron, they were like, oh yeah, that's a bad call, we're going to pick up the flag. Or maybe they got a call from the higher ups like, hey, we reviewed this, we saw this, you need to pick up the flag here. Or they were so scared for their lives, they were like, yeah, we're going to pick up the flag. I don't know what the hell transpired there, but I'm just saying I've never seen that where a referee legitimately announces it to the crowd and then goes back on that. Like, because keep in mind, people will be like, well, there's reviews done all the time. Not on penalties. Pass interference isn't reviewable. Not saying it should be. I feel like, hey, you should be able to challenge penalties, especially like one that literally could have taken the sails out of Texas at that point. But Texas, they end up going down scoring. They make it a 23-15 game. They're within one score now. But Georgia basically just closes the door on Texas. They have a very fun drive there. They had the flea flicker and whatnot. Travis Etienne gets into the end zone for, I think that was like his third time that day. But Georgia looked pretty impressive. Even when the offense struggled at parts, Carson Beck did a good job keeping his composure and helping move the football. Etienne had a great game. The Georgia defense looked phenomenal. This is the Georgia defense where it was like, where were you at when they traveled to Tuscaloosa? Where were you at? But Texas, I don't think they're done. Is there a quarterback debate? No, I think Quinn's still their guy until he proves otherwise. We'll see how things go in that Vandy game. Tennessee, kind of already talked about them a little bit when we were talking about Alabama. The defense looked great. Nico, this offense, still trying to figure it out. The one thing that they do know, they run the football hella well. Dylan Sampson, he is him. So Tennessee, until you got a bye week this week, they got some things to figure out with Nico and the offense, but defensively, Tennessee's being carried. They haven't allowed, over 20 points in a game this year? That's absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. On to the top 5. I already talked a bit about that Georgia game. The defense looked very impressive. They're sitting here at 5 for me after the impressive win against Texas. They too will be on a bye this week, but now the SEC, it's kind of wide open to a degree of who can make the title game with that, with now Texas taking that loss. All these top teams in the SEC kind of control their fates, because Alabama will, I believe, what is if LSU can get by Texas A&M, they still have Bama on the schedule. Texas A&M, if they could get by LSU. They still have Texas on the schedule. So the SEC is still very much up for grabs, and teams control their fates. So it's gonna be a very fascinating. It's gonna be a mad dash to that SEC title game. Ohio State, they didn't play this week. They get a Nebraska team that just got walloped next week. Ohio State, they're hella good. They're F4. Miami, I've moved them to number 3 in a crazy game against Louisville. They win 52-45. That was the one under I got. The over under I got, man. I saw it was set at 60 points. I think I ended up betting it down to 58.5. And they ended up putting 97 points. I was like, I didn't even need to bet it down. What am I doing here? But Miami, that secondary is a problem for Miami right now, but offensively, they can hang. Cam Ward, He cannot be phased. This man's a cold-blooded killer, a stone-face killer. He just goes out there and he's like, all right, we need a score. Here's a score. Cam Ward, man, he's crushing it this year. At number 2, Penn State. I'm not sold on Penn State. They got Wisconsin. I feel like that's a game they could potentially lose. Wisconsin's been pretty hot as of the last few weeks. But, I mean, they're undefeated. I buy into the defense. They're playing good football. Offensively, like, they've been fun. Like, Drew Aller, he's coming up in big moments. Like, I don't know, they're hard to bet against, man. Penn State's playing good football this year. I mean, they're worthy of this spot. I don't know if they keep it, though. That's the question. And then, of course, Oregon. If you didn't know, they pounded Purdue 35-0 Friday night. Super easy. Super freaking easy. They get Illinois. Very fascinating game there. Godspeed to Illinois. This is going to be their toughest game of the season, of the calendar year, as they take on Oregon. Can they upset the Ducks? Hey, I like Illinois. I just don't think that they can. I don't think that they can. And I don't think that they will. But before we get to my Heisman contenders, let's talk about our good friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you use promo code BROSHMO when you sign up, download the app at Underdog Fantasy. They will match your first deposit up to $250 dues. I love Underdog Fantasy. They got weekly best ball. They got higher or lower on player stats. I love playing that. I love playing higher or lower on player stats. Currently, they got a gimme one for today. Higher or lower. Kyler Murray, 1 yard. So they're giving you free picks here. We could look at the rest of the stat lines that they have, like Derrick Henry, higher or lower, 1 rushing or receiving touchdown. You got Lamar, which honestly, this could end up being a shootout tonight. Could end up being a shootout as they take on the Bucks. I forgot we got the doubleheader on Monday night tonight. That ought to be a ton of fun. But if you want to get in on the action at Underdog Fantasy, download the app. Use promo code BROSHMO when you sign up, and they will match your first deposit up to $250. But as always, play responsibly. Play within your means. Let's move on to my Heisman front runners, starting with Dylan Gabriel. That's right. Dylan Gabriel had himself a good week this past week. He's thrown for over 2,000 yards this season. He has 19 total tutties. The stats just aren't necessarily there to warrant, I think, him to be any higher on this board. Spoiler alert. I think there's really only one quarterback vying for the Heisman. You can make a case for Shadur. It's just kind of tough with them being a 2-loss team right now. But I mentioned Dylan Gabriel just missing it last week. He's in here at number 5. At number 4, I have Cade Klubnik. Playing great football. He has 24 total touchdowns on the year. Even when he struggled at the beginning of that Virginia game, they got hot. They got hot quick. That Clemson offense is rolling. Like, don't sleep on the Tigers and don't sleep on Cade Klubnik. So much so, man. Like, I'm going to end up doing an eval on Cade Klubnik this week because I'm very intrigued by the potential. I don't know right now if you could see him as a highly drafted prospect. It's not like they've, outside of Georgia, they haven't had like the most challenging schedule, if we're going to be honest. But he could end up being a big name maybe in 2026. And then at number 3, it's Cam Ward. Absolutely. 27 total touchdowns on the year. This guy can't be affected by anything. He is playing like the best quarterback in college football right now. This man is slinging it. Yes, the 2 pick sixes kind of suck. There's a reason why I don't have him at 1 or 2. But he is playing incredibly good football. He might put the ball in harm's way here and there, but he has the big time play potential to kind of maintain that play. Like, okay, I'll make some mistakes and they might be costly, but I make up for it with my big time throws. Like, I can move the offense. The dude is playing great football. At number 2, I got Travis Hunter. He ended up not playing the second half of the Arizona game, and he didn't need to, but he's playing good. Like, he's playing great football. Listen, the dude's playing both sides of the football. He's definitely in the Heisman race. Like, he is a front runner here. You could argue to me that he should be number 1, and I would be like, yeah, I don't disagree. Because it's just unheard of him to be able to play both sides of the football like that at such a high level. Like, keep that in mind, playing it at a high level, man. Travis Hunter, if he doesn't win Heisman, man, he might end up being the first overall pick anyway. And then I got my boy Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State, at number 1. He's a my guy. I loved him coming into the year, and he's on pace to break Barry Sanders' rushing touchdown record. Currently has 17 on the year, and that's through 6 games. Was on pace. He's got to hit, I think, 39 to break the record, so he's just a little off right now. He's currently on pace for 34 in the regular season. Then he'll have the conference championship game, and then he'll have a bowl game, potentially the college football playoff, which could end up being more than 1 game. So, I mean, technically, dude is still on pace for that. Playing great football. He's got over 1,200 rushing yards. The dude is absolutely phenomenal. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Who are some of your favorite college football teams? How are they faring? How are they doing? How do my rankings suck? I love hearing that. How does my top 25 suck? Who's your Heisman favorite? Let me know in the comment section below.